Hey, welcome back. The mind, by the end of most days, looks a lot like a room full of unfinished conversations, lingering regrets, questions with no immediate answer. The day ends, but the thoughts don't. They pile up like clutter on a desk nobody ever clears, filling every quiet moment with restless noise. That's why so many people struggle to sleep. The mind simply doesn't know how to stop processing. But some of history's sharpest thinkers had a secret for this, a way to clear the mind before bed, quiet the chaos, and wake up genuinely fresh. The Nightly Review. Seneca, Marcus Aurelius, and the other Stoics practiced something called the Nightly Review, a simple ritual meant to bring real closure to the day. Not just a habit, but a weapon against anxiety, a way to train the subconscious toward peace instead of chaos. Every night, they examined their thoughts and decisions, not to dwell on mistakes, but to actually learn from them. No room for guilt in this process, just clarity. For the Stoics, a day wasn't finished until it had been properly closed. Reflection wasn't indulgence, it was necessity. Just like the body needs sleep to repair, the mind needs order before it can genuinely rest. Without that order, it stays restless, processing unresolved emotion late into the night, leading to shallow sleep and a tiredness that never fully lifts. Seneca journaled every night before bed, not to log events, but to examine his own mind, believing that observing himself honestly, without judgment, let him refine his character a little each day. Marcus Aurelius, ruling an entire empire, did the same, knowing the quality of his decisions depended entirely on the clarity of his thoughts. Each night, they asked themselves 3 questions. What did I do well today? What could I have done better? What will I improve tomorrow? Each question served its own purpose. The first kept self-criticism from curdling into self-doubt. The second allowed for honest growth without unnecessary guilt. And the third gave the next day real direction. Modern neuroscience actually backs this up. Deliberate self-examination strengthens the neural pathways tied to self-awareness and emotional regulation. The brain adapts to whatever it practices most. Practice overthinking, and it gets expert at stress. Practice reflection, and it gets expert at clarity. That's the entire difference between waking up refreshed and waking up still tangled in yesterday. Most people never do this. They go to bed with thoughts half-formed, worries still lingering, no real sense of resolution, and then expect sleep alone to somehow fix what was never actually processed. But a mind still holding on to unfinished business doesn't fully rest, no matter how tired the body is. The Stoics understood that peace isn't something you stumble into. It's created deliberately in the few minutes before bed when you actually review the day instead of just collapsing into it. Done consistently, the brain starts releasing stress automatically instead of replaying the past or bracing for the future. Each day gets treated as a complete cycle, processed and let go, rather than dragged forward unfinished. That's not just a better way to sleep, it's a better way to live. It turns self-criticism into self-improvement, and it stops small frustrations from quietly stacking up into something much heavier. The power of silence before bed. Beyond letting go of the day, real peace requires something deeper, quiet. Not just the absence of sound, but a genuine practice of clearing the mind of distraction. Most people never experience real silence anymore. The world is louder than it's ever been, and the mind has adapted to constant input, notifications, scrolling, background noise, right up until the moment they try to sleep. An overstimulated mind doesn't slow down just because the body does. It keeps processing that flood of input long after the world's gone quiet, turning every still moment into a low-grade battlefield of thought. The Stoics understood this as more than distraction. It's a genuine thief of inner peace. A mind flooded with unnecessary input becomes reactive. Small problems inflate. Emotions exaggerate. Marcus Aurelius, despite being emperor, made a point of retreating into silence, away from the demands of power, just to reflect without interruption. Seneca wrote about the dangers of excess noise, not just external sound, but the noise of constant mental chatter. Both understood that real clarity needs space, and a crowded mind has no room for wisdom. People avoid silence, often without realizing it, because it forces them to face themselves. Distraction acts as a shield against that kind of self-awareness. But what's avoided doesn't disappear, it just waits. By actually allowing the mind to settle in quiet, without reaching for a phone or a show to fill the gap, a person builds real mental resilience. Problems that felt overwhelming an hour earlier tend to shrink once given room to breathe. Emotions that felt intense soften. What was confusing becomes clearer, simply because the noise stopped competing for attention. Sitting comfortably in silence, not filling it with something else, is one of the rarest, most powerful habits a person can build. It strengthens discipline, sharpens decision-making, and lets the mind reset without interference. Negative visualization, rehearsing loss to build resilience. The Stoics also practiced something that sounds strange at first, deliberately imagining loss, misfortune, hardship, not to invite suffering, but to build resilience against it. This wasn't pessimism, it was mental preparation. Someone who's already considered the worst possible outcome isn't controlled by the fear of it anymore. If you've rehearsed loss in your mind, you don't break quite the same way when life actually takes something away. Left untrained, the mind assumes comfort will last forever, that people will always be there, that success is permanent. That illusion is exactly what makes even small disruptions feel unbearable. But someone who's trained themselves to consider loss beforehand doesn't experience the same shock when change inevitably arrives. And this doesn't remove joy, it deepens it. The mind adapts to comfort quickly. What once felt exciting becomes ordinary, and we stop noticing what we have. The Stoics reversed this deliberately, reminding themselves daily how fragile life actually is, not to induce fear, but gratitude. A person who's meditated on life's impermanence stops wasting energy on pointless arguments and petty frustration, because they've already made peace with far bigger uncertainties. This isn't about becoming numb either, it's the opposite. Someone who has genuinely considered the possibility of loss tends to treat what they have with far more care. They speak more kindly, listen more patiently, notice the ordinary moments instead of rushing past them. The ability to handle a genuine worst-case scenario calmly is something built through this kind of rehearsal, not something a person is simply born with. Those who panic in a real crisis usually do so because comfort was the only thing they'd ever mentally prepared for. So when discomfort actually arrives, they have no framework for it. Those who've already visualized failure, even briefly, don't waste time in shock. They move straight to adjusting, adapting, enduring. Forecasting problems before they arrive. Beyond simply accepting that hardship happens, the Stoics went a step further, actively predicting obstacles before they showed up, a kind of pre-mortem for their own problems. Instead of waiting for a challenge to appear and reacting in the moment, They examined potential failure in advance, studied their own weak points, and built solutions ahead of time. Not paranoia, control. A person who's already considered what could go wrong tomorrow and how would I handle it doesn't feel blindsided when it actually happens. They move straight to action instead of losing time to shock and fear. Epictetus taught that anxiety isn't really the result of events themselves, but of misunderstanding them. Fear built out of assumption and exaggeration rather than fact. The moment a worry gets broken down logically, what's the actual worst case? What would I do next? How much of this fear is real versus manufactured? It tends to shrink dramatically. This kind of thinking, done right before sleep, doesn't feed the mind stress. It programs it for resilience instead, so the subconscious spends the night quietly sorting through solutions rather than spinning in circles. The subconscious, it turns out, doesn't actually sleep the way the body does. It keeps working, sorting information, making connections, filtering possibilities well into the night. That's why sudden clarity so often shows up after real rest. Why a problem that felt enormous at midnight can look almost manageable by morning. But for most people, this process happens by accident, if it happens at all. The Stoics made it intentional. Instead of drifting off with vague, shapeless worry, they handed their minds something specific to work on, framed as a challenge rather than a threat, and trusted the subconscious to keep refining it while they slept. A mind given a clear task overnight keeps working that task. A mind left to wander just recycles the same stress over and over without ever actually making progress on it. The last thought before sleep matters more than you'd think. Whatever dominates your attention in the final moments before sleep becomes, in a real sense, the seed the subconscious works with overnight. Fall asleep replaying frustration, and you tend to wake up with it reinforced. Marcus Aurelius practiced choosing this deliberately every night, reflecting on his values, reminding himself what actually mattered, reinforcing that he was in control of his own mind, not the chaos around him. This isn't vague positive thinking, it's a structured practice. Choose one clear, constructive thought, a lesson from the day, an affirmation, a moment of genuine gratitude, and let that be the mind's anchor as it drifts off, instead of letting it default to whatever anxious loop happens to be loudest. Memento mori, remembering that nothing is guaranteed. One of the most striking Stoic practices was reflecting before sleep on mortality itself, not morbidly, but as a way of dissolving illusion. Most people move through life assuming time is abundant, that unfinished business can always wait until tomorrow. The Stoics saw this assumption as the root of a great deal of suffering. It fuels procrastination and lets people take for granted exactly what they should be cherishing. Reminding yourself gently that tonight could, in theory, be the last, isn't about fear. It's about clarity. It strips away the noise and leaves only what's actually essential. Marcus Aurelius reflected on his own mortality constantly, not to despair, but to keep himself focused only on what genuinely mattered. Someone who's made peace with life's impermanence stops sweating small inconveniences, stops delaying what actually needs to be said or done, and wakes up each morning treating the day as a gift rather than a guarantee. Letting go of what was never yours to control. Beyond accepting mortality, real peace requires releasing everything that was never actually within your grasp. Other people's actions, past mistakes, outcomes still unwritten. Most suffering doesn't come from difficulty itself, but from gripping tightly to things that were never ours to hold. The Stoics practiced a kind of nightly detachment drill, sorting every lingering thought into one of two categories: within my control or outside it? If it's within control, make a plan. If it's outside, thinking about it further is simply wasted effort. This isn't indifference, it's the highest form of discipline. It's choosing not to suffer over what can't be changed, refusing to let emotional energy leak into hypotheticals about the past or future. A mind that's practiced this doesn't lie awake wrestling with old arguments or imaginary future scenarios. It gives what's owed to the present and lets everything else go, which, done consistently, is what actually determines whether sleep is deep and restorative or shallow and exhausting. Emotional equanimity, feeling fully without being ruled. Detachment, done right, was never about coldness. It's the ability to feel something completely, in the moment, and then release it once that moment has passed, instead of dragging anger, frustration, or fear forward into the night for no purpose. The untrained mind treats every emotion as urgent and every thought as worthy of attention. The trained mind filters, asking before engaging further, does this actually serve me? Is this within my control? If not, the thought gets set down deliberately rather than chased in circles. This is a skill built through repetition, not something achieved once and kept forever. The more consistently someone practices letting emotions move through them instead of gripping them, the more natural it becomes, until what once felt unbearable barely registers at all. Emotional equanimity isn't the same as suppressing feeling either. The Stoics weren't advocating for numbness. It's engaging with life fully while refusing to be owned by anything beyond your actual influence. A person who reacts to every setback with total emotional investment burns through their own energy fast, holding on to pain longer than it serves them, replaying moments that should already be behind them. This kind of unresolved tension doesn't just sit quietly either. It shows up again at night, in exactly the loose threads that keep people tossing and turning. A conversation cut short, a decision left hanging, an argument never properly closed. The Stoic approach was never to leave something unfinished if it could genuinely be handled in the moment. But they also accepted that some things simply aren't meant to be resolved on this particular day. Some conflicts take longer. Some emotions need time to settle on their own schedule. Accepting that isn't giving up. It's freedom from the illusion that everything, always, has to be tied up before you're allowed to rest. Conquering overthinking. For the Stoics, overthinking was never a sign of intelligence. It was a sign the mind hadn't been trained. Left unchecked, it spirals into analysis that doesn't actually solve anything, just replays the same worry on a loop. One of their most effective tools here was radical simplicity. Instead of entertaining every possible angle of a problem, they'd ask a single clarifying question. Does this actually require more thought, or am I just feeding a loop? If the answer's no, the thought gets discarded on the spot. If yes, it needs to lead somewhere concrete, a plan, a decision, or a conscious choice to set it down. Most late-night thinking isn't problem-solving. It's self-torture dressed up as diligence. A mind trained to catch this early, recognizing the spiral before it gains real momentum, reclaims an enormous amount of energy that would otherwise just be spent circling the same worn ground. Letting go of expectation. Even after clearing unnecessary thought, one subtler trap remains: expectation. Most people carry an invisible, unspoken contract into each day. Things should go a certain way. People should behave a certain way. Tomorrow should unfold according to plan. When life inevitably doesn't cooperate, disappointment follows. Not because life was cruel, but because something was expected that was never actually promised. The Stoics refused to live this way. They worked hard, prepared thoroughly, and then released their grip on the outcome entirely, understanding that once effort has been applied, the rest was never theirs to control in the first place. A mind trained this way doesn't lie awake rehearsing how tomorrow needs to unfold. It's already made peace with whatever comes, success or failure, met with the same steadiness either way. That's not passivity. It's the deepest kind of security there is, because it no longer depends on the world cooperating. This kind of letting go doesn't mean not caring about outcomes either. It means recognizing where effort ends and surrender has to begin. You can work hard, prepare thoroughly, give something everything you reasonably can, and once that's done, the rest genuinely isn't yours to hold on to anymore. Most people do the opposite instinctively. They wait to see how something turns out before deciding whether they're allowed to feel at peace about it, which means their calm is permanently on loan, dependent on results they can't fully control. The Stoics flipped that order entirely. They decided in advance that no outcome would be allowed to disturb them, not because they didn't care, but because they'd already accepted every version of how tomorrow might go, before tomorrow ever arrived. Rest as discipline, not indulgence. One of the biggest modern misconceptions is treating sleep as optional, something squeezed in between obligations, sacrificed in the name of ambition. The Stoics saw it completely differently. Rest wasn't relaxation for its own sake. It was preparation, a necessary part of resilience and clear thinking. A soldier who never sharpens his sword eventually finds himself defenseless. A mind that's never allowed to properly rest eventually loses its edge entirely. Neglecting sleep doesn't make you more productive. It quietly erodes the very capacity that makes real effort effective in the first place. This means treating the hours before sleep with the same intention as anything else, winding down deliberately instead of staying wired, keeping a consistent rhythm the body can trust, rather than letting sleep happen randomly whenever exhaustion finally wins. The nervous system needs a real signal that the day is over, and that signal has to be built, night after night, not left to chance. Balance, the rhythm between effort and recovery. None of this meant the Stoics glorified rest over effort either. They rejected both extremes: endless grinding that eventually breaks a person, and idle comfort that never builds real resilience at all. Real strength lives in the rhythm between the two, pushing hard when it's genuinely time to push, and stepping back fully when it's time to recover, instead of half doing both constantly. A mind that's mastered this doesn't crash into burnout, and it doesn't go soft from constant comfort either. It moves with deliberate, sustainable force, using its energy where it actually matters, instead of bleeding it out on everything at once. Gratitude as a nightly discipline. Left untrained, the mind's default setting tends toward dissatisfaction, noticing what's missing far more readily than what's already good. The Stoics treated gratitude as something that had to be built deliberately, not something that simply shows up on its own. Marcus Aurelius actively trained himself to notice the small, ordinary things worth appreciating, rather than only counting rare, dramatic wins. A single frustrating moment, left unchecked, can dominate an entire day's memory, even after 9 genuinely good ones. Not because the day was bad, but because the mind was never trained to hold the balance. Closing each day by actually naming what went well, however small, reshapes that default over time, until appreciation, not deficiency, becomes the mind's natural resting state. The unshakable mindset. All of this builds toward one thing: an inner stillness that doesn't depend on the outside world cooperating. Most people wait for calm to be handed to them by good circumstances. The Stoics built it instead, deliberately, through daily practice, training themselves to respond with clarity rather than panic, regardless of what showed up. This isn't about ignoring emotion, it's about understanding it, knowing when a feeling serves a purpose and when it's just noise dressed up as urgency. A mind trained this way doesn't need the world to be calm in order to feel calm. It's already steady, from the inside out. This matters directly for sleep, because a mind still at war with itself will always struggle to rest, no matter how exhausted the body is. It'll lie there replaying conversations, forecasting worst cases, chasing resolution to things that can't actually be resolved at 11 p.m. But a mind that's practiced this kind of stillness releases instead. It recognizes that stress lives in the response, not the event itself, and it's already trained itself to let go of what doesn't need to be carried any further tonight. Which is exactly why sleep, for the Stoics, was never really a battle. It was simply what happened, naturally, once the mind had finally been given permission to rest. Bring all of this together. Releasing what isn't yours to control, practicing real gratitude, balancing effort with genuine rest, and letting go of the illusion that everything must go according to plan. And you're left with something the Stoics called a well-lived life. Not one free of difficulty, but one free of the unnecessary suffering that comes from fighting what can't be changed. You can't control what happens. You can always control how you meet it. And when that response is built on clarity, discipline, and genuine self-respect, peace tends to follow, almost on its own. Sleep deeply, live wisely, and walk through life like someone who's finally stopped fighting what was never theirs to fight.